Get it how you live it.
The engine is starting up.
I did a find someone across that the housing computer and going we come across these over.
Telling the truth here. I'm speaking to you.
I like the idea that a voice can just go somewhere uninvited. Just kind of hang out like a dirty thought in a nice, clean mind.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, off to the races once again for another episode for the archives of It's Me Speaking to You. And man, I'm stoked to holler at my guy today. We're going to talk about how I come to have met this cat. God, it's been a few years now, hasn't it been, Robbie? He is the host of the future #1 podcast in America. We're going to talk about his whole journey, which has been very, very phenomenal. And he's just doing big things, and I cannot be happier for him. He is Robbie Knuckles, a.k.a. Robbie Receipts, also known as Robb Carter, host of the Robb Carter Show. What's cracking, man?
What's going on, brother? You're good at this. I like that little introduction. That was nice.
I've done it a couple times. I got to go easy on my man today because he has put in about 4 hours on his podcast today. So if his voice sounds a little deflated, like my Bosnian friend used to say about her tire, my tire is deflated. But no, he's up and ready to go, man. Robbie, how we doing, bro?
Doing good, brother. 4 hours. I go from podcast to radio, back to podcast, and now I'm on your show. So,
He's putting in that work, dude. Putting in that work. And, like every superhero, every good superhero has a great origin story, man. Lay it on. Well, let me just say, I don't want to jump ahead, but I came to know this guy from mutual friends, but before I made his actual acquaintance. And we're going to get into this a little bit later on down the line. I was driving home from work one day, and I heard this guy on the radio. And I heard him mention a single name.
Paul Bonacci?
Single name of Paul Bonacci. I'm like, okay. My man is the double truth Ruth. Who is this cat? And then how the universe works, man. I wound up meeting him through, like I said, some mutual friends, and we're going to get all deep up into it. Robbie, how'd you get into the game, man? I know you're a St. Louis cat. Tell us a little bit about where you come from so we get an idea of who we're working with here.
I won't bore people for very long. I was in the shoe business my whole life. I was an executive for Cole Haan, Clark's, Skechers. I was in the shoe business my entire life. When COVID happened, I was the president of a company out in Los Angeles, a shoe company. That got shut down primarily because of what I call the COVID hoax, and I was pissed. I was irritated about it. And my son happened to be in China. I guess the origin of how we got into broadcasting and radio and so forth was I was in China during COVID. And when I'm leaving China, I fly into Hong Kong, and I'm sitting at the Hong Kong airport, and I'm watching CNN International. They had a layover there. And as I'm watching, this is at the very beginning, before anybody knew what COVID was, I'm watching people walk and then fall down on the streets. And as I'm watching it, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that looks fake. What's going on around here? I was just trying to figure out what was happening. And I saw the scroll underneath, COVID virus, blah, blah, blah. Didn't think a lot about it, to be honest with you. It was just kind of memory hold in the back of my mind. I get home. A week later, I got married. So on October 19th, I got married of 2019. So I'm not really paying attention to the news. I'm paying attention to my absolutely smoking hot wife. And that was just about it. So I start just moving. I was in Missouri, moving to Florida. Again, not paying a lot of attention to the news. And then I start to hear COVID start to pop up. So as I'm hearing the COVID story start to pop up, I immediately thought, this is theater. Something's getting ready to go down here. What are they trying to accomplish with COVID? And I think I've told you the story before, Jeff. In 2014, I was in New York, and I'm watching like a public broadcasting station. I can't remember if it was on my computer or the TV. I really don't remember. And this guy was on there talking about pandemics that were going to come in the future. And he said they are able to consolidate power through it. I'm trying to think of this guy's name. And I just remembered, it was in my head. He said, they're going to mask people. They're going to make them take temperatures at the beginning, at the entryways to the stores. And I didn't buy into it at all. I just thought it was ridiculous. But I remember thinking, man, this is kind of crazy. This guy's got all kinds of information from the Rockefeller Foundation. He called it the Lockstep was the name of the papers he was reading from. So again, it was just in my mind. I had completely forgot about it. But when I started to see this thing start to develop, I remembered it. Went in YouTube. That's the beauty of YouTube. I started looking at YouTube, just kind of using all the search words. And I found it. I found the video that I'd seen, the TV show that I had seen. And I called my son up. And I said, hey, man, I think this whole COVID thing is going to be some kind of government scheme to vaccinate people, to lock people down, to transfer money from American citizens to Wall Street. And, my son's like, what? I thought had lost my marbles for a second. But then over the course of the next several months, I'm talking about from February to maybe May of 2021, or was it 20, whatever it was, he starts to see it happen. And he calls me up one day and he goes, man, Dad, you should do like a podcast for our family. And I said, I wouldn't even know how to do a podcast. He goes, I'll fly down, because he's in Missouri. I'm in Florida now. He says, I'll fly down and I'll set you up on the podcast. We'll do a few podcasts together. And he goes, just send it out to our friends and family so they know what you're talking about. So we did that. And I looked up after, I think it was the third episode, which was called data manipulation. I was showing everybody how they were using data, business wise. They manipulate data all the time to sell you things. I said, well, they're using the same techniques to propagandize people through the COVID con job, with the cases, the rolling scoreboard of deaths and cases that was on every network television show, especially the news stations. And he came down, we did a couple podcasts, and after the third one, I had thousands and thousands of people paying attention to what I was saying, and I was off of work. The company that I was working for, the man that I was working for, said, I'll pay you, I think he was, it doesn't really matter how much, he was going to pay me just to sit at home, and he said, when everything opens back up, we'll just bring you back to work. And it was enough money to know, I'm like, all right, sweet. And that went on for a while with me doing podcasts, because I didn't have to work, and I was getting a paycheck from the owner of my company out in California. And it just one thing led to another, Jeff. I sent some of my podcasts to a radio station in St. Louis. I always wanted to work out of St. Louis because I have family there, so it's nice to get back and forth. They picked it up. I started doing weekend shows, then night shows, and then switched radio stations to do a morning show, which you're very aware of. And I worked there for about a year and a half. And as much as I love those people, they would not just let me roll and let me do my thing. So I said, you know what? I'm going to leave. I left right in the middle of a show because I was getting some pushback from ownership, and started my podcast the following Monday. And
which is crazy. Let's not overstate that, or understate that rather. My man left a radio show on a Friday mid-broadcast.
Monday.
What was it?
Monday, mid-broadcast. And then started.
Was it a Monday?
Yeah, it was a Monday. And then the following Monday, I started up again with my own podcast, and it was crazy how fast that all happened.
It's absolutely crazy. I mean, that's just a testament to Robb. If you know him, he's an absolute go-getter. There is no punk in his DNA. There's no quit in this man. So literally within days of leaving the radio, he has a new podcast right now. You can find it. We're going to have all the link to in the description of this, the Robb Carter Show, which is absolutely crushing it. And honestly, and I told you, I mean, and again, I'm not glazing my boy just because he's my boy, but he's got it. He's him, right? So when I was hearing him talk about Paul Benassi, that just might seem like nothing to anybody, but that means he's got a pretty deep understanding. So I thought he was going to be way better served in the podcast world than the restrictions of radio. You got the breaks. And it was crazy, Robb. You obviously started with 2 hours, moved up to 3 hours because your show was so dope. But you packed in a lot in those 3 hours with the breaks and everything. So tip of the cap to you, man. And you know, for me personally, I could be wrong. I haven't seen the numbers, but you were kind of the needle mover over at that radio station. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I think I'm not.
I won't say.
Yes. What's that?
I won't say anything.
Yeah. I don't really want to toot my own horn, but yeah. So he is now on the Robb Carter Show. What are your thoughts, man? You guys are what, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in?
Yep, we're a month in. It's been 10 times better than I could have ever expected. Because, you know, when you leave right in the middle of a radio show, and we had a big audience. You know, the radio show that I worked at was the #1 streaming platform for radio in the entire country in news and talk. So we had a lot of people from around the country and around the world listening to what we had to say. And I left right in the middle of a show. You know, I say all the time, 95% of my audience has no idea where I'm at yet. They will, because we haven't advertised the show. They'll find me.
Yeah.
But, you know, to have the success we've had so fast is kind of crazy. And I don't even know what success looks like. The producer of my show was a social media executive. So he was somebody who sold social media advertising, that kind of thing. And I think he told me he was doing $1 million a month on Facebook with whoever he was working for. So he looks at the matrix, and he just sent me something last night saying, complimenting me. I said, I don't even know, is this good? I don't even know if this is good. He put a smiley face on there. I said, I'm kind of shocked, because I do such a different show than, you know, most podcasters. I get into conspiracy stuff at times. I do local stuff that's coming out of Missouri and how corrupt the Missouri government is. I tie that into international news, federal level news, but it's all over the place. I mean, I wake up, you know, I kind of decide what I'm going to talk about at about 5 o'clock each day, put the thing together, and then we go 3 hours the following day. And it's, if you're into conspiracies, and I'm talking about Missouri politics, what's amazing to me is people stick with it. They see the common thread amongst everything in the corruption that goes on. And that's why a lot of the conspiracy theories like COVID, like climate change, like the open border situation, these are all big money, big connection conspiracies that rape you and I. And I think when people start to see that common thread from international news to federal news, state, local, they see that common thread, I think it blows their mind. And I think tying it all together is what is different about my shows. I don't stick on one subject. I'm all over the place.
Well, like you said, like bird shit, he is everywhere. But it works, man. It absolutely works. And, like we've talked about on your show when I was a guest on every once in a while, we talked about Rosa Quarry and Agenda 21, which is this global plan which is executed locally. And I think you do such a great job. You totally got me up to speed on how fucked Missouri politics is. You have a conservative majority in this state, but they can't get any of their stuff through. But like you always talk about, they get over half of their budget from the federal government. So when you get that much dough from any entity, government, company, or whatever, you're beholden to them. So, I mean, Rob does a great job of drilling down on the nuance of how messed up it is. He has certain guests on, like the Shield Maidens, who are just really, really deep and dissecting the legal.
Live at the Missouri Capitol and expose all of the corruption that goes down there, along with Act 4 Missouri. Jeff, I got to just bring this up because if your listeners are interested in a story that I think will blow their mind if they're into these type of things, I got to talk about Jeffrey Winehouse because I'm interviewing the Lieutenant Governor of Missouri tomorrow. So the Lieutenant Governor of Missouri and I worked on his campaign. He ran for auditor once before. I consider him a really good dude, and I'm friendly with him. There's a guy named Jeffrey Winehouse in the state of Missouri that was an independent journalist who was really barking up some very powerful trees, if you understand what I'm saying.
Bulletin Man, if you want to check him out on YouTube.
The Silencing of Bulletin Man. If you want to check it out on YouTube, it's just an incredible documentary. This guy's quirky, a little bit odd. I really like him. Very spiritual guy, and very spiritual guy. And he was executed by the Missouri Highway Patrol. He just
attempted execution.
He just didn't die. So the story is just real quick because I'd love for people to see it. I want more and more people to understand. I'm trying to get the people of Missouri to rally behind this guy and get something done.
No, please lay it out. You've been talking to him frequently. You talk to him all the time. This is a crazy story. 2
times within the last hour. I just happened to be on the phone. But I'm talking to the Lieutenant Governor tomorrow because I want to bring this case up to him. Jeffrey Winehouse. It's Winehaus. Jeffrey Winehouse. Silencing of Bulletin Man on YouTube. He was an independent journalist who was going after the Missouri Highway Patrol and some very powerful politicians in Franklin County, Missouri. So what happens to him is he starts to get a little aggressive, saying he's going to take these guys out, this, and that, and the other. The FBI said he did nothing illegal. But the Missouri Highway Patrol knocks on his door one day. They claim that they smell marijuana. One cop says he smelled it. The other one didn't. Through that, they get a search warrant because they smell marijuana. Just think how crazy this is. They smell marijuana in his house. They get a search warrant because they smell marijuana. Go into his house, take his computers and his phones. Now he has no ability to make a living because that's how he makes his living. That's where they were trying to see what information he had is basically what they were up to because he had a lot of whistleblowers sending him information. So they wanted his phones and computers. They take off with his phones and computers. And a few weeks later, they get a call from this Officer Folsom who says, Jeff, we want to return your computers and your phones. Can you meet us? Now they're out of their jurisdiction, by the way. They're not from Franklin County. They're from a different area. So they decide to meet him at this kind of abandoned, it wasn't really abandoned, there's a few people there, but it's always very low-key filling station in the middle of nowhere.
That should have been a red flag.
It should have been a red flag. It was a red flag to him. If you watch the video, he prays through the whole thing that they're not trying to hurt him. He said he's saying prayers all the way as he's going.
He's recording all of this.
That's the whole thing, is the police didn't recognize that he had a spy watch on. So they don't know that he has a spy watch on his wrist. So he pulls up to the filling station. And 12 seconds after he got out of his car, Officer Folsom shot him twice in the forehead and twice in the chest. The witnesses say that he had his hands up in the air. They claim they took him to court after he got out of the hospital. He was home for like a month. That's when they decided to arrest him because now he's still alive and they don't want him talking. So they arrest him. And he is charged with shooting the cops, which he never did. He's got the whole thing on video. It's just the most incredible thing I've ever seen. shot twice in the chest, twice in the forehead. He's been in prison for 13 years on a 30-year sentence for something that you can watch the video and know that he didn't do what they charged him with, and he can't get out of prison. It's all the way up through the Missouri Supreme Court, and nothing's happened to this guy.
He's literally been charged and convicted for shooting the cop that shot him.
That's
almost literally.
It's exactly what it is.
And he's been through.
Get him out.
Well, and you know, it reminded me kind of like a direct analogy, but the movie The Hurricane, if you've seen that with Denzel, he went through all the different channels, the appellate courts, the Missouri Supreme Court, if I remember correctly, and they still shut him down.
No, it is it's a club of very powerful people, and I think it's probably in every state, but definitely in the state of Missouri. And there is no such thing as justice if you're on the wrong side of the wrong people. There's just no
without a doubt.
You think you have court systems, and you think you have checks and balances within your system. You don't. It's nothing more than power. If they have the power, they will exact it upon you if you're getting in their way, and nobody's coming to save the day. It's really depressing. It is. It's one of those things where people go, Rob, you should be more positive. I'm like, I'm positive. I got a lovely wife. I got a great life. I got great kids. I got a great profession. I'm happy. I just can't stand the injustice. It drives me nuts to know that an innocent man who has, I think he's got 6 kids, is sitting in prison for something he didn't do. Took 2 bullets in the forehead and 2 in the chest, and the state of Missouri acts like it didn't happen. It's sickening. Really.
And not to belabor too much of the case, I mean, he had eyewitnesses who saw his hands were up. You had a federal agent there. I don't know why exactly the FBI guy was there.
The FBI agent there too, yep.
And then you get into his case, and his lawyer sounded like he was kind of a ringer for the prosecution almost, because he didn't even call the FBI guy who was there as a witness to testify on behalf of Jeff. So it was just really a clusterfuck that Jeff was really, like you said, he was on the wrong side of some very, absolutely railroaded. So again, what's it called? Silencing Bulletin Man?
It's the silencing of Bulletin Man.
I will leave that documentary, the link to that documentary, in the description of this. And he also had a YouTube channel, which I will leave in there. But I you know, you and I are on the same page as far as how infuriated we get when we see just like rank injustice like this. And like you said, it's, you know, I got a lot of shows, you know, whether it's the murder of Tupac or JFK. I mean, these kind of fiefdoms of power happen a little bit of everywhere in our country and in our world. And I tip of the cap to you for drilling down on this. And hopefully, you know, through your show, this show, getting the word out will bring, like I said, it almost has to come from the governor, some kind of clemency or pardoning, because he's been through all the different avenues of the justice system.
Do you know the name Mark McCloskey? Do you guys know that name?
Yeah, he's the guy who his home up in Maryland Heights, Central West End, when pulled the guns on the people who were charging their neighborhood. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. And he's connected to everybody, federal level, the Trump administration, attorney general, everybody. He's a big name. He's a attorney. Lived in this beautiful mansion, historical mansion in Central West End. And that was when the Black Lives Matter, they beat down the fence into the community, and they were he felt threatened. So him and his wife stood out in the yard with guns to make sure they didn't come on his property. And then he got attacked. You know, they tried to put him in prison for just defending his property. So he was doing a speaking engagement with me recently, and I talked to him about it. I said, man, this guy needs an attorney, needs something. This guy's got to get out of prison. He watched the video. He agrees with everything that I say. And I talked to him and I said, so what do you think? He said, Rob, he goes, I looked into the case. He goes, it's been all the way to the Supreme Court. There's nothing that any attorney can do for him right now. The only person that's going to get him out of prison is Governor Mike Kehoe. And Mike Kehoe is familiar with the area that he's in. Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley was the attorney general at the time. He railroaded him. And I said to Jeff Winehouse when I was on the phone with him, I said, you know, I was just talking to Mark McCloskey, and he says, you know, the only opportunity you have to get out of prison is clemency from Governor Mike Kehoe, the governor of Missouri. And he said, well, he'll never do that. He's a Mason. I said, a Mason? He goes, yeah, he's a Freemason. He's a part of that whole group that kind of runs the show in Missouri, and he's never going to do it because he's a part of that operation. Did you know Freemasons were that popular? I didn't know anything about it. Then I look it up, and sure enough, we talked about it on my show today. We looked it all up, and sure enough, Mike Kehoe is a Freemason, and so are many powerful people in the state of Missouri, which I had no idea about.
Well, like you talk about, it's a club, and we ain't in it.
It's a big club.
And which is, I mean, you know, for them to reverse that, I mean, this has been going on for however many years. It would, for him to give clemency and somewhat tacitly acknowledge that the whole thing was bullshit. You got a lot of careers who are their trajectory, like you said. Josh Hawley, he's obviously probably going for larger office. Like you said, he was the attorney general when this happened. So to admit that it was kind of fucked up would throw some serious shade on people like your Josh Hawleys. But I'll be anxious to see, man, because like I said, your voice is growing. And I want to have you on here just because I love you, and I think you got mad talent and mad skills and a very bright future in this world. But I mean, I think this word needs to get out. This word definitely needs to get out because this is like some rank injustice. That I mean, like you said, the guys, in the documentary. Man, I've missed my kids growing up, graduations, Christmas. I mean, it's absolutely insane what they did to this guy. So,
oh yeah, and he's one of many. Because I've got a reputation in Missouri of taking on stories that the regular news won't take on, so I get all these whistleblowers that call me and tell me stories around Missouri, and some of them are fascinating law enforcement stories that are just unbelievable. If you are a whistleblower in the state of Missouri and you go after somebody that's involved in their little schemes, they come after you. So if you're a whistleblower and you see a crazy crime going on and you go to the state of Missouri and you're a whistleblower, well, they come after you and try to put you in jail. There's 3 more stories, not just Jeff Winehouse. There's 3 more. I just got one last weekend of a police officer who was telling me a story, and I couldn't believe it. I said, this can't be the case. They're trying to put this guy in prison for 40 years and I can't say his name because he's like, Rob, he goes, I'm already in big enough trouble. He goes, I just got to tell you what's going on, and I'll send you all the information. I'm looking for some political help. I'm hoping you can help me. But as he explained the story to me, he was just nothing more than a whistleblower. And he had a big job. He wasn't like just a regular police officer. He was the top cop. And when the whistleblowing started, they came after him for corruption charges, and now they're trying to put him in prison for 40 years. It's amazing.
And I won't mention any names, but when you brought this up on the former radio station you were on, oddly enough, how the universe works, there was a degree of separation which was absolutely freaking uncanny, where there was a certain degree of separation that was pretty close to you, where their loved one was killed by the same sheriff's department. Is that correct? Was it the sheriff's department down there?
Talking about the Jeffrey Winehouse case?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was the same cop was involved in another shooting where the state had to pay over $30 million in a shooting where they were found guilty of, I don't even know what negligent homicide. I don't even know what it was, but somebody died at the hands of this exact same cop, and the family got $30 million plus.
That was another case, but I was speaking more about somebody you knew at the radio station that had an interaction.
Oh yeah, I can't. I get.
Yeah, no, I'm not. We're not going to get into.
Yeah.
But the serendipity of that was absolutely insane.
Yeah. You're talking about somebody that worked with me who had somebody in their life also killed in that same town by a cop, and it caused a little friction at the station. To be honest with you,
of course.
I didn't know anything about it until I was telling the story out, and he's like, I got to be really careful to have any kind of commentary on that because I still have business going on there with that county, and it was. I can't get into it. I know. I don't want you. I don't necessarily want you to. Anything, but yes, right in my own backyard at the station that I was working at, they had a similar story.
So I mean, here we are talking about 3 incidents with this department.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure there's more. And not to digress, but like when I get into like the stuff about Rampart, the illegal shit going on with the LAPD back in the day, I'm like, what we know about this is just scratching the surface. This is just what we know. Can you imagine what else has been going on in that department? But I mean, we digress. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Go check out Bulletin Man, the silencing of Bulletin Man. And this is another reason why I have so much love for Rob. I've been in this game for a hot minute, and obviously Rob has too. And Rob and I have talked about this. One of the reasons why we kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit on the conspiracy farm, we did it for 10 years. Amazing guests, amazing content. The archives, about 10 years. Yes, sir.
Wow,
yes, sir.
Okay.
Those archives speak for themselves, man. We had amazing guests on that, stuff is ringing true today. And I often post old episodes where it's like, wow, this is happening right now. But one of the things Rob and I had talked about, this alternative media, quote unquote, alternative media, if you will, almost had to get infiltrated, which I noticed got infiltrated quite a while ago because, you saw with like Trump getting elected was partially because of Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, the podcast world, if you will. The paradigm is shifting on where people get their news and information. And so, Rob and I have talked about, these breakups between Candace Owens and the Daily Caller and Tucker Carlson and Fox and Owen Schroyer in InfoWars or whatever the incarnation may be, where they supposedly go out and become the new vanguards of the alternative media. But I think they're cap and they're full of shit, but they're appearing as the new truth tellers, if you will. A reason why I mess with Rob so heavy and want to have him on and listen to his show almost every day, I trust Rob. I know Rob. I know he's not on the take. This is why, for me, that gives his message so much more potency. There is no bitch in Robb. There is no compromise in Robb. He is a very principled individual, very religious, principled individual. And, we talk about it often. What's up, Alex, Tucker? These guys have these monstrous audiences in these platforms, but all they're doing constantly is just running their mouth about the problems.
No organization.
No organization at all. And that's, I take issue with that, man, because it's one thing to diagnose the problem. And, like I said, that's what we did for almost 10 years on the farm. And towards the end, Pat was like, I'm done talking about the problem. Let's move towards solutions.
Yep.
And he's doing it in his own way with the reclamation of soil. But again, you can't fix a problem unless you recognize there is one. I say that to say Robb is not just sounding the horn of Gondor 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day, whatever it is on the radio show or his podcast, but he's also lobbying and attempting to be the change. Talk to us about the origins of People Lobby Missouri and what you hope to accomplish with that.
Well, it started with Dr. Shiva. I don't know if your audience knows who Dr. Shiva is, but he had a huge audience on X at one time. He ran for office in Massachusetts, and he started putting out videos saying that the algorithms and the machines had stolen the election from him. That was before Donald Trump and the 2020 election and so forth. So I started paying attention to him because I was, interested in the topic. And then when COVID came out, now this guy's got 4 degrees from MIT. His name's Dr. Shiva. He's got 4 degrees from MIT. I think it was Time Magazine that put out an article on him that said he was the one who originally wrote code for email. So he got credit for the invention of email as we understand it today when he was in high school. So he's a very, very bright guy. He was married to Fran Drescher, the nanny. Remember her?
And,
he was really? Yeah, he was married to Fran Drescher.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
married in their marriage. I mean, not legally married, but they did it on their own, like a marriage, and they were together, the whole thing. So I had him on my show a couple of times. I find him fascinating, by the way, just an absolute genius. And he's got a very quick mind. He's very to the point. He's not somebody that's going to laugh and joke with you. He's serious he's a serious person. And in one of the breaks, I said, we were talking about Tucker Carlson, because I like Tucker Carlson. I was a Tucker Carlson fan. And he calls him Fucker Carlson. He goes, Fucker Carlson? You talking about Fucker Carlson? And I said, no, why do you say that? What's going on? He goes, Robb, listen. He goes, you have to understand, this is back when everybody was just moving away, the Megyn Kellys, the redacted shows, what's the other guy? The Judge Napolitano. So all these Fox News personalities left Fox News and started their own podcast. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Judge Napolitano, Clayton Morris with Redacted, and they all started their own shows. And as that was beginning to happen, he said, you're going to recognize the obvious establishment. You're going to recognize the Fox News, the CNN, and that whole game. He goes, you've already recognized that. He goes, what you need to be aware of is the not so obvious establishment. Yes. He goes, these are the people that now there's a new form. They're going to break away. He goes, and they're going to start podcasts. And he goes, they're going to control the narrative. He said, so long as they control the narrative, but they never organize, they never get anything done, then you're working within their bubble. He goes, even if they're telling you the truth on any particular case, it is meant to control the narrative, and Edward Bernays talked about it, the father of propaganda and public relations. He said, if you can control what people talk about through the news and through narratives, you can control what they think, you control what they talk about, therefore you're controlling their mind. It was a form of mind control. And he said, that's what this is. He goes, these people that run the show, he goes, it's a group of people internationally. He calls them Zionist cocksuckers. That's what he calls them. He said they're all Zionists. He goes, they believe in Zionist philosophy. Zionism is not about Jews, or it's not about Arabs, or it's not about Muslims. It's about powerful people that used Israel as their base of operations. That's where it all originates, around making sure Israel is protected, and they all do it from all around the country. All right, Zionist philosophy. So as he started explaining that to me, the one thing that he mentioned was he had a nationwide organization that was trying to get people from each state to begin to originate change. And so when I heard that, I thought, you know what, that's right. None of these people, none of the Alex Joneses of the world, the Tucker Carlsons, all they do is complain about how the end of the world is coming. And it made sense to me when he said they're the not so obvious establishment, because if they really were trying to save the world, wouldn't they use their platform to organize people? Seriously. That would be the first thing that you would do if you really believed all of the horrific things that you're saying are going to happen. You would organize people immediately, as fast as you can, to stop it from happening. Well, they don't. They don't do that. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to get into the media game, I'll begin my own operation, and we'll start small. I don't have a lot of money, so we didn't have millions of dollars to throw into it. So we started something called People's Lobby Mo. So it's peopleslobbymo.com. And we did that because we wanted to pressure the government. We believe that my organization believes the government is a facade, that it's not real. There is no left, right. There's no conservatives. There's no liberals. There's no Democrats. There's no Republicans. There's none of that nonsense. It's money that controls both sides of the aisle, and everything is just a big charade. That doesn't mean that everybody's involved, knows about it, or is involved in the charade.
Compartmentalized.
Yeah, it just means that the leadership, right? That's where everything goes. If people don't know how government works, it's the leader of the Senate and the leader of the House. They are the gatekeepers of all legislation. So if you have this big, great idea that you want to get passed, they'll squash it. If it suits their big donor money, then they'll pass it. It's really just a matter of who wants to pay the most money to the Speaker or to the Senate or the Republican or Democrat Party. It's just a money operation, and whoever pays the most money gets the best legislation. That's just how it works. Nothing is for you. Zero. And all you got to do is watch it and pay attention to it to recognize they are not working on your behalf, period. End of story. I've been observing it for years and years and years. The whole thing is just one big front. It's a facade. It's fake. It's bullshit, really. It's sickening, to be honest with you. And I said, I'll do my own. I want to pressure the government to either communicate with us, to which we can ask them the proper questions and expose what they're all about. If they run from it, then people are going to recognize what's going on. And at the same time, we're going to market. So we're going to bring in money, and we're going to use the money that we get to market truth, just to market it, to say, whether it be the Missouri government or any government around the country, we want to market ideas like the elections are a joke, right? But how many people really understand how elections work? Nobody, because they're incredibly complicated. If you go to any state and look up their election laws, you need a degree from MIT just to understand what's going on, where it should be just these are the voting counties. Here is the polling places. You should have a camera in the polling place to say, okay, 2,000 people went in. That means you can't have 4,000 votes, right? If 2,000 people went in, you can't have 4,000 votes. So all you need, you don't need a camera on the people taking the vote. You need a camera to count how many people go into the polling place so that those numbers match the numbers coming out of the polling place. Simple, right? They don't want to do it. You should have a state holiday or a federal holiday. Why would you have people trying to get in and out of work and do all these things? Plus, you don't have enough people to man the polling stations because people are working that day, so you don't have enough volunteers. But if everybody's off of work, all of a sudden, the idea that you don't have enough hands to count paper ballots would go away. They don't want to do that. And this is both parties.
Right.
These are Republicans and Democrats. When Donald Trump said the election was stolen from him in 2020, I would bet $1 bazillion that the Republicans are stealing elections now because they got control of the system. So it's just a matter of what position you want to put people in. Yes. It's all just one big government as far as I'm concerned, and all of it is it's moving us in a direction of complete and total surveillance. If we're going to get
that's one of our last episodes.
They want surveillance.
One of our last episodes on the farm was talking about this is I think when Trump just got back in, and we were kind of prognosticating, with Elon Musk in there, and this is the extension of everything I've ever read about it, about Agenda 21, technocracy. We're looking at a 21st century surveillance state. And when you have people like Larry Ellison, Peter Thiel, all these tech companies that are pretty vocal about the fact that, we're setting up shop everywhere. You're almost, I forget who it was. Maybe it was Larry Ellison was like, we're not going to have police car chases anymore. Right. We're going to have drones following pretty much all of you. And I've always said, I think, not to get too deep into the weeds on this, but China is the model. Yes, we can get into the nation state versus nation state. All that shit's cap. All that's WWE. Yes, there's still real life consequences, but the globalist agenda is, war is obviously a part of it. But ultimately, I think they're going towards this monumental, huge 21st century surveillance state where everything's monitored. And then we get into the collapse of the economy, CBDC, social credit score, facial recognition. We're in for some trying times. And I think, like what Robb is doing, and like I said in the initial and start of this interview, something like an Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 is a global plan executed locally. That's why I've always said on the farm or this show and what you're doing, get to know your local people, your city councils, your sheriffs, if you will. That's kind of our only hope. But as Robb talks about all the time, this goes back to 9/11 or even the 50s, the Interstate Commerce Act. You don't want our interstate through your state? Okay, well, you're not getting this huge amount of federal money. And whether it was Homeland Security and traffic cameras, et cetera, we're beholden to the federal government oftentimes, which kind of impedes certain sheriffs doing the will of the people. But I think what you're doing, Robb, I think is at least raising awareness to this stuff, and you're organizing on a local level. And going back to something we were just talking about, you are very, very passionate about this, and I can't agree more. If our elections are fucked, we can't trust our elections, we're not in any way, shape, or form living in a free society. There's several different me going back to the public execution of President Kennedy in broad daylight under dubious circumstances tells me we're not in a free society. But there's so many layers of this. But our elections, if we cannot get our elections in order, we're just LARPing. We're just pretending to be this land of the free, home of the brave. Talk to me a little bit more about those voting machines and the resistance you're seeing from politicians here in this state to going back to paper ballots. Like you said today or maybe yesterday, we've been doing it for 250 freaking years. Why do we need these machines? If you go back to the year 2000, whatever it was, the Gore Bush, there was that documentary Hacking Democracy and the Diebold machines. And like you can make these machines program them to do whatever you want. And like, how difficult is it? Like, I think one of your guys, I forget who it was. Well, there's just more people now. We can't count the ballots for we can't make it for the expansion, the expansion of the growth in population. Of course you can. You just hire more counters. So give me your lowdown on the voting machines. Why the resist? I mean, it's pretty obvious why the resistance. And are we going to ever get back to paper ballots? And like I think, isn't it unconstitutional to have multiple days of voting? Shouldn't it be just one day?
Yeah, the Constitution says you have 1 day to vote. It has been one of the most discouraging things. It's really when I started to realize how corrupt government was. I didn't really know. When I started in radio, it was more to talk about federal, Trump. I was a Trump supporter. I started to get a little bit sideways on Trump, just a little bit. And I was talking on the radio. And then all of these people that were listening to me on the radio started saying, Rob, you got to pay attention to local politics. And through that process, I started to get to know people that were in the election game. They started explaining to me what was going on in Missouri elections. So Denny Hoskins is the Secretary of State in Missouri. This is how crazy this is, Jeff. So he's the Secretary of State. He's the one that oversees elections in the state of Missouri. He's the only endorsement I ever made on radio was for Denny Hoskins. He wins. He becomes Secretary of State. Everybody's all excited because he ran on the idea of getting rid of all machines, tabulators, touch tone screen, everything. Bye-bye. We're going to go back to hand counting paper ballots. That's what he ran on. He becomes Secretary of State, not another word. Zero. They cut his budget immediately when he became Secretary of State. They cut his budget, which, make of it what you will, but it seems to me like it was a little warning here. Don't be playing games with the counting ballots, paper ballots. And I just learned how the whole system works in St. Charles County, which is one of the most conservative counties in a large county in St. Louis, Missouri. The guy that's running the elections, his name is Kurt Barr. So I got to know a little bit about Kurt Barr and started paying attention to the way he was running elections, and I didn't like it. He had people come in, Clay Parikh, Clint Curtis. They had these election experts come in and explain to him how elections could be stolen through the machines. He didn't care at all. He ran an election in 2024. His wife was on the ballot in a town called Cottoville. She was running for whatever she was running for. His wife wins by one vote. He gets his elections in dead last. So in all the counties in Missouri, he gets his election results in dead last. His wife wins by one vote. So we have the media there. I go there. The local news is there as we go to a St. Charles County meeting the following, whatever it was, Monday to whatever it was, whatever day it was. The people on the county council, outside of one, could care less. They didn't care at all. I said, so wait a minute. The guy that runs the elections, who we've been fighting with to get rid of the machines, runs the elections, gets his elections in dead last. His wife wins by one vote. He wants to charge $10,000 to get a recount. And nobody sees a problem with that. Nobody even goes, wait a minute, just out of, just decency, let's have a hand count of these paper ballots just to make sure. Nothing. They wanted $10,000. We're talking about maybe 400 or 500 votes. It wasn't like a lot of votes. It was a little town.
Right.
And he wouldn't do it. His wife wins by one vote. They're in the real estate business. I assume being on that board is very advantageous to them financially. That's just a guess. I don't know. Right. But I started to learn that they do not want to change to hand counting paper ballots. And I mean, nobody wants to change hand counting paper ballots. And I have this woman named Jen Olson. She's running in St. Charles against Kurt Barr, and she's going to do hand counting paper ballots. And to her credit, she's starting to get some big endorsements. So I'd like to see her win. I'd like to see what happens when it's hand counted paper ballots. St. Charles is a needle mover in Missouri politics.
Yes.
I think it would be great. I think it would be a start. And I think that if we do not get our elections under control, I think they're being manipulated all over the country. I think it's obvious they're being manipulated all over the country. I don't know why people don't see it, but I don't know what's going on. But it's obvious that something's going on with our elections, and neither party wants to change it. That's the thing about Missouri, right? Jeff, it's the Republican base went to the caucuses in Missouri, and on the Republican platform, this was on their platform, they were going to get rid of tabulators and electronic voting machines. And they ran a scheme to get these people out, said their cars were going to be towed so they couldn't get a quorum, right? And then all of the platform got basically eliminated. And when it came back, they didn't bring back the elimination of machines. They ran a scheme on people just to get rid of that situation, as far as I'm concerned. And to this day, there's almost no movement at all to get rid of the electronic voting systems in the state of Missouri, despite all of it was on the Republican platform. You have all the Republican voters that want it done. And the reason there's something skeptical about that is the Democrats don't pick up on it and do anything about it either. They know that half of the Republican Party wants hand-counted paper ballots desperately, if not more than that, probably 80%, to be honest with you. And the Democrats don't try to make hay out of it.
You have been, one of my nicknames for you is Robbie Receipts. These aren't necessarily, a lot of the things you say isn't just machinations of your own psychosis. You will bring clips and articles to show these contradictory and prove how these statements and, I campaign on this and now you're doing this. And something of frustration you lament a lot, and I do too. And, you can't have the yin without the yang, can't have the hot without the cold. Not everybody's going to get it. But you, again, lament the frustration of why the fuck, guys, can you not see this? As blatant as it is, and as blatant as they make it, why do you think, and I have hypothesized about it, but in your opinion, why do you think people are so hesitant to see what I guess I could say is so painfully obvious? Why do you think they're such reticent to embracing how fucked this all is?
I think it's several things. I think it's apathy for a lot of people. Life is too good for a lot of people. So if their life is, they don't want to take any risks. So their life is good enough, right? So they don't want to be bothered with it. Apathy, not knowing. A lot of people just aren't involved in what's going on in their world around them, so they don't pay attention to it. And then the last piece of the pie is fear. The people that do know it also know that if you knock on the wrong doors, just like Jeffrey Winehouse we were talking about earlier, that there's going to be some repercussions against you. Believe me, the Republican Party in the state of Missouri, they've never done anything to me. And I like a lot of people in the Republican Party. I have friends within the Republican Party at very high levels. Like I said, the Lieutenant Governor of Missouri is going to be on my show tomorrow. But they don't like me. There's a big portion of the Republican Party that does not like me. They're all over social media trying to discredit me, trying to make me out like I'm some crazy person, this and that and the other. And when I see that, I can understand why people that don't have the makeup, some people are willing to fight. Some people are not willing to fight. I'm somebody that it is what it is, right? You just don't walk around in fear. That's just not how you live life.
Right.
So I'll just do whatever I think needs to happen, and whatever God puts before me, that's the way life is going to be. But I'm not going to walk around in fear. I think those things, apathy, unknowing, life is too good, and fear, I think is the concoction that keeps our society from ever moving in the right direction. Because if I always say, if the ants were to organize, if you were to recognize the corruption and just get 10% of the American public, 5% of the American public on the same page, asking the right questions, going to the right rallies, going to the right state capitals, and demanding that they get their asses back in line with the Constitution, everything would start quickly, because you'd have more power than the lobbyists. But as it sits now, if there's a problem going on in the state of Missouri, you might have 100 people there, 200 people there, 300 people there. If there's ever a big protest, it's usually organized by the unions, right? It's not just everyday people. This is organized through the unions. Nothing ever gets done because nobody knows what to do or even how government runs. It's depressing at some level. I didn't either, Jeff. I mean, when I was 49, 50 years old, I didn't understand how it all worked. I learned it all within the last 6-7 years.
Right. I mean, again, I'm still learning. You know what I mean? I'm very Socratic. All I know is I know nothing. And I'm not one of those, I told you so. I always do my considerations suggest X, Y, Z. I don't mind taking the L or being proven to be wrong. I'm not one of those, my information is the information. I'm right, you're wrong. But I think, per what you're saying, man, I think there are several reasons. I think a lot of the ones you mentioned are absolutely applicable. But I think a lot of people just prefer almost a convenient lie than an inconvenient truth. And then I said it all the time. You and I have been doing this a long time as far as how deep the rabbit hole goes of deception. Once you realize how deep it goes and how bad they've been lying and how much they've been lying to us, you ask yourself, wow, what else are they lying about? If they lied about Kennedy and 9/11 and COVID, what else are they lying about? And then it belies the next question of what are they lying about, but what am I prepared to do about it? And when people look in the mirror in that respect, nothing. They won't do shit. And again, everyone's got their own lives, and I'm not knocking anybody's hustle, but the Masked Singer's on tonight. My beer's cold. My internet's flowing. Why do I want to rock that boat?
What'd you tell me? The truth is severely underfunded. That was what
and that's the same. War, you get a lot of money in war. You got a lot of money in treating cancer. There's no money in peace. There's no money in cures. Shit tons of money in addressing the problem, if you will.
And party politics. That's the other thing. There's a lot of money in party politics, and both parties are one. They're both full of shit. And that's where all the money derives from. So you really don't have any opposition to their nonsense, right? The right pits you against the left pits you against the right. You end up fighting with everybody. But the reality is it's not left or right. It's top down. The top is running a game on the people underneath them. And so long as we're going horizontal, left versus right, then you don't see the north versus south.
Yes.
And the people on the south are getting shit on. And the people up north are collecting all the money and taking all your freedoms and liberties away from you. It's
a
just
whole
one
fact.
little small drip after another. It's a fact. Wait a minute.
That's the fact, Jack.
It's a fact.
You know this. That is a whole fact. And somebody you have on, I really appreciate his mind. Rick Babbitts, he was saying the other day, something I lament oftentimes on the farm, and just generally speaking, they create the groups and then play the groups off against each other. And even within the groups, they'll create subgroups within the group. Like, the war supposedly on the MAGA versus whatever. It's all about, I mean, not to say it's exactly like this, but Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB defector that talked about, ideological subversion, one of the first planks was demoralization, which I think a large part of what we've been seeing with the propaganda, you don't know whether to scratch your watch or wind your ass. You just don't know what's going on. And I think that is by design. And going back to what you're saying about the fuckery in Jeff City, I don't know the numbers, but most every state house, if you will, has video in the state house of people doing the votes, taking the votes, etc. For whatever reason, Jeff City in Missouri refuses to put video in the place where we're watching people take votes. Why is that? I mean, in comparison, like I said, so many other states do it, but we can't do it. Why is that?
48 states have video surveillance and video live feeds of the Senate proceedings, right? Because you want to see who's taking what votes, who's missing votes, how they are, the decorum. And, this is your government, right? These are the people that are going to govern you, tax you, make laws that may ultimately put you in jail. You need to know what your government's doing. You have to have some understanding of it. Most people think it won't get to them. Most good people think, well, this government's never going to get to me. I promise you, they can get to you if they want to. Just be careful what you wish for, especially when it comes to your pocketbook, right? So what we did is my organization, Shield Maidens of Missouri, Act for Missouri, we all tried to petition the government to allow for live stream in the Missouri Senate. Like I said, Missouri is only one of two states that don't live stream from the Senate. And the president of the Senate, the lieutenant governor, the guy that's going to be on my show tomorrow, David Wassinger, he is somebody who wants Senate live stream. So he wants it. So we thought, good, we got an advocate for us. He's high up in the government, statewide elected official, lieutenant governor, president of the Senate, lieutenant governor of the state of Missouri. They're going to do this if he puts it on the schedule and wants to get it done. They won't do it. They won't do it. In fact, when they had the vote, you have to sunshine request video from the Senate, right? So if you want to get any kind of video of the Senate, you have to petition the state of Missouri, and then they'll send you the clip. When they put this up for a vote in the state of Missouri, it's a standing vote. When they tried to do it, when the vote was being taken, they blacked it out. This is our government, so they blacked it out. Sent it to Act for Missouri. I played it on my show. So when they are going to take a standing vote to see who wants to have live stream in the Senate, they blacked it out so we couldn't see who stood and who sat.
I mean, is that obvious? Is that to cover the clear uniparty that's taking place in the WWE? It's
Yes.
They're all Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant after WrestleMania 3. They went and had beers that night, whereas they played it to you like they hate each other. Is that what it is? They're just covering the fact that they're all working together.
That's it. That's what they do. Is they organize the numbers in advance for things they want to pass and don't pass. So you think it's organic? You think Joe Blow, my congressman, he's such a great guy. He's going to vote for this because that's good for the people. He's going to vote for this, and he might. If he's made an argument with you, he might, but it doesn't matter because they have the votes to overthrow anything that they want, and they do that in advance through leadership. So if you just watch how this thing goes, and I think they know it, right? It's called whipping the votes, and it's kind of a part of the process.
Right.
But you can never get anything done that relinquishes the power of the state of Missouri back to the people. Every single thing that they do takes away your money and your liberty and gives them more power. You'll never see them pass a bill that restricts their power over their citizens ever. And that's with Republicans having a supermajority in the state of Missouri.
Which is crazy. That the Republicans having the supermajority and not even able to get some of their basic shit through.
They blame everything on the Democrats, and the Democrats have no power. Yeah. It's embarrassing. And I can't understand why the Republican voters in the state of Missouri don't wise up to it. How do you blame things on Democrats when you have a supermajority? The Democrats don't have a say in anything.
Right.
The only reason the Democrats have a say, Jeff, and I don't know how many people are in politics like this, but what happens is you have these organizations. We went through it today on air. You have these organizations, and they pay these. They send money into these PACs for both Democrats and Republicans. The Republican Party in the state of Missouri is split. You have real genuine, small government, traditional Republicans. And then you have a bunch of Republicans that are really Democrats, independents, corporatists, whatever, who just ran as Republicans because you have to run in most of these areas in Missouri as a Republican to get elected.
Right.
So they just throw an R up on their name. They don't get vetted by any of the Republican committees. They end up on the ticket. They get financed by the big money. They get into the Missouri government. So when you have a vote, you have the Missouri legislature in the House especially split. So if somebody wants to get something done on the crappy side of the Republican Party, what do? They go over to the Democrats, and the Democrats fill in the votes that they should have been able to get from the Republicans, and they fill in the votes by people who want a deal. So if you make a deal with the Democrats because you're going to appease one of your donors, then the same thing happens on the Democrat side. When they want something done, they just say, hey, give me, you got to pass this bill for me, or let me put this amendment in so that I can appease my donors. And they're basically just making legislation to appease each other's donors. It's sickening. It is. It's just the most crazy thing I've ever seen. But that's the reality.
It's not. It's not. I mean, I wouldn't say it's kind of the rule. It's not really an outlier because I mean, I think this is government in general, whether it's federal or state. And Missouri is absolutely no joke. You have some serious stout powerhouses in the state of Missouri. You have Bayer, you have Monsanto, you have
Google.
the National Geospatial Agency. So there's some serious weight here in the state of Missouri. And, absolute power, as we've always said, corrupts absolutely. Going back to, I think it was St. Charles or St. Peter's. Which one was the two was the first city in the entire country to outlaw or put a moratorium on data centers?
St. Charles City. And that's People's Lobby, Missouri. That's Jake Jackson, who's a member of our organization, who has been very been outspoken about it. He's just a young kid. And he stood up and he went after the mayor of St. Charles. It created an uproar. Citizens started getting involved in it. They did not want the AI data centers. They pushed very hard. They got loud. You understand what I'm saying about loud, intimidating loud. And now they have put a moratorium forever, right? They're banned. So in St. Charles City, AI data centers are banned. It was the first city in the entire nation that did it. And I hope there's a lot more because nobody understands what these data centers are all about. They want to make the argument about resources, right? It's going to drain water supplies. It's going to pollute the air. It's going to contaminate the groundwater. It's going to create noise pollution for anybody that's in the area. And that may all be true. But the bottom line is it's a mass surveillance system. I just tell people, I said, listen, if you can't see the patterns, then let me explain them to you very quickly. You have the Patriot Act after 9/11. You have 702 FISA warrants, which Donald Trump said was the nexus for all of the Russian collusion nonsense, was this ability for contractors to go in and get warrantless searches of American citizens. So now he's for him, by the way, Donald Trump.
Well, and the Congress just voted overwhelmingly on both sides to renew the warrantless FISA warrant.
That's right. You don't get power back. Once they take it from you, they keep it. And they give you all kinds of reasons why they need it, generally around security. So you have the Patriot Act, the 702 FISA warrants. They just put in kill switches for all of your vehicles in 2026, 2027. You have the AI data centers that they're putting in, and the flock cameras, which are cameras that are going to be all over everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's going to be a flock camera that's going to be able to monitor your movements. So ultimately, when this is all put into place, you're not going to be able to leave your house without the government being able to see what you're doing. They're going to have your phone. They're going to be able to record your conversations from your computer, your phone, your car, and follow you with flock cameras and drones, low-flying drones. You're going to be under constant surveillance. And people go, well, Rob, what's the big deal? I'm not doing anything wrong. It has nothing to do with whether you're doing anything wrong. It just means that when a government has that type of power, you can't uproot it. There's nothing.
And we have this weird thing called the Fourth Amendment, which doesn't allow illegal searches and seizure, but this is just going to become commonplace. And, going back to Aldous Huxley talking about it in the 60s, Brave New World, I think it was the video was called Slavery by Servitude or something like that. We're going to beg for our digital enslavement. Like you just said, Rob, what's the problem? I'm not doing anything wrong. Look at how convenient all this shit makes for us. Like completely missing the point of how this violates every aspect of, Article 1, any of our rights as far as illegal search and seizure, right to privacy. It's gone.
Well, there's a reason you have right to privacy, right? The reason you have right to privacy, remember the old saying, show me the man, I'll show you the crime? We're all imperfect people. We do things that we probably shouldn't do at some point or another. Do you want that in a central database to where whoever is the boss, whoever's got access to that information, can go, where was Rob on January 3rd, 2016? Let's go take a look at that. Ooh, I didn't realize he was friends with that person. Oh, I wonder if his wife knows he was with that girl that he worked with. Right? They have every ounce of information on you from now until forever stored. So they can go back in time. They can see
Well, even the
every
social
single
credit score
person you
stuff.
went to their house, right? They know every house you've went to. They know every phone call you
Everything.
made. They can tie that all together through AI and make a database about you, which would make it almost impossible to ever petition your government for anything that's good. They'll have total and complete power over the citizenry, which is what I think they want. I don't even think it's America.
Yeah.
I think it's global. I think that's what
It
they
is global.
want,
It is global. It's
control.
definitely. And, I'm going back to COVID days. There was an app that I obviously didn't enable, that you could enable an app for Google to basically map you and how you're moving. And if you're moving within 6 feet of people or whatever, then they reach out, they send you texts like, hey, you were around this person or around this person. I mean, I think obviously, COVID had a lot of fucked up things going on, but I think it was like kind of a compliance episode or compliance exercise for where we're going. And I want to ask you that. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I did bring up, one of the reasons I first started messing you when you knew you were the hot lasagna baby. You brought up a man by the name of Paul Benassi. And not a lot of people know who that is and the depths of what this meant. Who is Paul Benassi, and what's his role in? How do you come across Paul Benassi, and who is he?
Well, I started getting into MK Ultra through the church hearings back in the 70s. The MK Ultra idea is that it started in the 50s. It came from, it started in the 50s in America, but it came from Germany. MK, mind control, but the K is control in German. And the idea was that through drugs, through repetition, through hypnosis, you could plant memories in people's minds and then take those memories out at your discretion, right? Whoever the administrator, whoever understands the process can do it. So I started getting into that, and I started paying attention to it. And the Paul Benassi story came to my attention. It's the Franklin cover-up. And I was fascinated by it because all of his interviews and all the testimony from Paul Benassi is on social media. So you can go look it up on YouTube. He was somebody who got the Franklin cover-up was a story out of Nebraska, out of Omaha, Nebraska, where this guy named Larry King, who worked at Savings and Loan, Franklin Savings and Loan.
Not the radio host.
Not the radio host, a different one. Apparently, this Larry King was trafficking kids to the most powerful people in the country. He actually sang, I think it was 84 and 88. He sang the national anthem at the Republican National Convention, this Larry King. So if you can check him out, you just go, Larry King sings the national anthem, you get a load of this guy. So apparently he was trafficking kids to some of the most powerful people in the country. And we found that out because the FBI did a raid on the Franklin Savings and Loan because he was embezzling money. And when he was arrested, his pictures were all over television sets in Omaha, Nebraska. And when kids started to see it, they started to call the police department and say, hey, I know that guy. This is the guy that is, selling me basically through the Boys Town or whatever it was, one of these kids' places. Boys Town. And Paul Benassi, on the same day that Larry King got picked up for embezzling money from this bank, he gets arrested and put into jail. And I don't know how he gets the word out, but he starts explaining that he was being trafficked by Larry King. And a guy named John DeCamp, who was a state senator or state congressman, I forget, I think he was a state senator in Nebraska, hears that, goes out onto television and says, this story is obviously not true because I oversee the banking community in Nebraska, and if this were happening, I would have known something about it. I know nothing about it. This is BS. So he's ultimately, he ends up going to interview Paul Benassi at the prison where he's being held. Because we got to remember, Paul Benassi was picked up the same day as Larry King, probably to shut his ass up. That's the growing theme. So as he's going in, a court-appointed psychiatrist is coming out of the prison. John DeCamp sees him and says, hey, this kid's not telling the truth, is he? And he says, not only is he telling the truth, he couldn't lie if he wanted to. This kid suffers from multiple personality disorder, and he, whatever he's telling you, if he's telling you that, he believes whatever he's telling you. I'll put it to you that way, right? Whether it's true or not is a different story, but he believes what he's saying. He's not lying. In his mind, he's telling you the truth. John DeCamp gets involved in the story, starts to believe everything, does all kinds of investigation, hires a private investigator. The investigator ultimately is telling all of his friends that he has pictures of some of those powerful people in the country in awkward situations with kids, if you will. And that particular person, Gary Caradori, was flying out of Chicago back into wherever he was going, and his flight blew up in midair. Right, so that was the investigator that was hired by John DeCamp to study the case. His airplane exploded in midair.
Oh, wow, I never heard that.
Yeah, killed him and his 8-year-old son. Then he wrote a book called The Franklin Cover-Up, where he talks about Paul Benassi. And the reason Paul Benassi is a believable guy is because if you understand the splitting of the mind, what it does for these people is it gives some people complete recall. so he could give the dates, the times, where he was at, when it was, this and that and the other, put it on a timeline for several people in power. I forget the investigator, the FBI agent out of LA. What's that guy's name? Ted Gunderson.
Yes.
So Ted Gunderson ran the FBI out of LA for over 30 years. He interviewed Paul Bonacci. He said his story checked out and that it was true. John DeCamp said the story checked out and that it was true. And then Paul Bonacci filed a civil suit against Larry King and won that lawsuit for $1 million because the jury also believed that he was telling the truth. And the bottom line to it was a mind control operation where it was sex trafficking to kids. And this guy said that he was being sex trafficked to the Bush administration, George Bush himself, back in the early 80s.
This is around the same time. You can look it up. Washington Times article, callboy ring given late night tours of the White House, Reagan Bush White House.
That's right.
Around that same time. And the reason this resonated, I mean, whatever, you and I have done the deep dive for many, many years, but Paul Bonacci, I'm from Iowa. And there was a case when I was a kid. Yeah, the Johnny Gosch case, which is absolutely insane how it all plays out. Not to go too deep into it, but Paul Bonacci allegedly was the kid at the time that put whatever chloroform over Johnny's face and threw him in the car.
So he says that he was with the abductors when Johnny Gosch was abducted. Now, Johnny Gosch was abducted out of Iowa. The thing about Johnny Gosch, to make your audience kind of remember the old days, was he was the first kid that had his face on the milk cartons.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, if you were abducted, they would put your face on milk cartons. That's how they, tried to find these kids. Johnny Gosch was the very first one. And Paul Bonacci said he was with the abductors when Johnny Gosch was abducted and was able to prove it to investigators. Everybody that came in contact with him, including his own mother, said there's no way that Paul Bonacci could have known these like birthmarks, things that he had done, things that he had said, things that went on in the family. They said there's no way he could have known these things unless he had had contact with Johnny Gosch.
And I don't think he was related to this one, but even years later, there was another kid, Eugene Martin, paperboy in the same area, that was abducted. And, it's interesting because there's a documentary called Why Johnny Can't Come Home, which is beyond fascinating. Noreen Gosch, Johnny's mom, and not to go too deep into it, but there's an allegation, if you will, made by Johnny's mom, Noreen, that the dad may have assisted in getting him lined up. Allegedly. I don't know if he's still alive or whatever, but there was some interaction that apparently Noreen saw with Johnny's dad talking to a cop the night before at a football game under some bleachers or something like that. And that morning when Johnny was abducted, apparently there was a call made. And he basically said, it was a wrong number, but Noreen Gosch supposedly heard him speaking to somebody, possibly lining up Johnny's movements. And that was the first day I think Johnny did his route by himself. So anyway, a very, very fascinating story. Yeah, that Noreen Gosch. And it was so even crazier, man. Noreen's, and this honestly, when I was a kid, this happened when I was a kid. And like you said, Rob, there was missing kids was kind of the thing at the time. Johnny was the first one on the milk carton. There was the Adam Walsh story and movie with Daniel J. Travanti back in the day. So this was everywhere. And it really messed me up as a kid. I was just pretty paranoid about getting abducted. I haven't told the story a lot, but I was riding my bike to a friend's house one night. Late 7, 8 o'clock. It was dark. And this blazer, I'll never forget, pulls up next to me, and I see this guy kind of lean over, and I didn't even hear him say anything. I just turned my ass around and started pedaling my ass home. But I was super paranoid about it. But Noreen Gosch says in Why Johnny Can't Come Home that Johnny Gosch returned at 2, 3 in the morning, came to the door, knocked on the door, and mom answers, and he explains to her everything that happened. And says, I can't go public because they'll kill you and kill my loved ones. I just had to go deep underground. But almost going back to what you're saying and how you created almost a split personality, he became this completely different person based off of all this stuff. But went back to at least tell his mom, hey, here's what happened, mom. And it's a heartbreaking story, man. Beyond heartbreaking.
Crazy story is what that is.
Yeah.
He comes back as an adult and tells his mom what happened and then takes off again.
Right. And then there was I don't know how true it was, but same initials. I think it was Jeff. Anyway, a supposed White House correspondent reporter was alleged to be Johnny. I forget what his name was, but it was the same initials. But anyway, Paul Bonacci was a huge part of all of that, and it was interesting to hear that you were up to speed on that. And obviously, some of the things I'm just learning today I didn't know about the plane.
When I get in, I study it like I'm studying for a test, and I try to memorize it, also put it in a logical form. So when people hear me, they're like, "Okay, let me stick with the story here." because me, I can get long winded about certain things because I want to paint the picture.
Yeah. I mean, you remind me. I mean, you get after it. Years and years and years ago, I had a conversation about religion. It was a family reunion, and everyone was dropping all this knowledge, and I'm like spitting out whatever, sounding like an idiot. And I'm like, that will never, and it's not an ego thing, but I'm like, that will never happen again. I will never go into an intellectual battle unarmed. And so I got myself up to speed on all kinds of stuff. Robbie, I cannot begin to thank you enough for your time. The Robb Carter Show, you can find it on Rumble, you can find it on X, you can find it on Facebook. But before I let you slide, I want you to speculate, if you will. You are a learned individual, and you see we're in an interesting time right now. If you were to prognosticate the next several years, where are we headed, brother?
Boy, that's a really good question. If I were to guess, because I don't have any idea, to be honest with you, I always say I'm one of the few people.
When I ask that, like everything, Agenda 21, the immediate stuff, Iran, all of it. Like, you were talking today, you had a guest on today that was trying to extrapolate his understanding of geopolitics, et cetera, which was very interesting. He was spot on some stuff. I don't know about China running Iran and the proxy forces, but
right.
Where do you think we're headed? All encompassing everything. It's CBDC, Facebook, all of this. Where are we headed, man?
I think, barring some form of intervention from above, honestly, I think we're moving toward China. I think we're going to be in a situation where we're very similar to China, where you're surveilled all the time, where your money is being surveilled all the time. You're not making transactions without some central source knowing it. And I think it'll be commonplace. I think the American people are very apathetic and lazy. So barring some kind of intervention from above, I think we will slowly slide into what China does. China is the model. I think Hillary Clinton said China is the model. I've been to China. Yes. It's not horrible, but they have a government that is not looking to destroy their people. They have a little different culture than we do. I'm not so sure that the people that run America are as benevolent as the Chinese. The Chinese are not. When I was there and you could see society and you could see how society moved. I have two friends that live over in China that are good friends of mine that moved over to China. China's not horrible. It's just not free. It's just the difference. Some people are fine with compliance. As I say, my wife, if the world were ending and she was the only person on the planet and she came to a red light, she would stop until it turned green. That's my wife, right? That's how she rolls. She likes rules. She likes structure. She likes compliance. I'm free. If a rule doesn't make any sense, I don't follow the rule, right? So I like freedom. I like liberty. I think we're moving toward the Chinese model. How that looks over the course of the next 10 or 20 years, I couldn't really tell you, but I think it will be a compliance system. I don't think you're going to be able to break laws and do things that you don't want to do. And it would not surprise me if there's a pandemic that comes along here before too terribly long that shrinks our liberties even further. Because right now
we're already talking about Hanta and Ebola's all over the news.
And just think,
do you think it's going to be? Do you
the Democrats would have had their way, though, Jeff? Think about it, right? If you didn't get vaccinated, they basically wanted you in prison. Back in those days, if people remember how it is. Just imagine if you don't get your vaccinations and you have this system of total compliance. What are you going to do? You're going to do whatever the government tells you to do. You're not going to have
without a doubt.
Yeah,
and we saw that with COVID, and a lot of going back to what you're saying about people's apathy and they're wanting to defer to just things being convenient. Yeah, fuck the Constitution. Yeah, this is against my Fourth Amendment, but I'm comfortable. My beer's cold, my internet's running. It's more of a, and again going back to like the Brave New World and Aldous Huxley talking about we're going to beg for our servitude and our enslavement. It's more of a, I think the globalists, the social engineers, if you will, understand that hard authoritarianism is a little harder to sell. You know what I mean? If you're throwing people in gulags and all this other stuff, but if you make people beg for their enslavement, it's way more palatable. So it becomes more of a softer authoritarianism than that kind of overt Nazi, Bolshevik, if you will, authoritarianism. What do you thought about it being more of a soft role than like a hard authoritarianism? Because I think it's more palatable and we'll more be willing to accept it if it's softer and like a slow rollout.
You have to feel free, Jeff. Right? You have to feel free. Look how they're doing it right now with the borders, right? So you have Alejandro Mayorkas, who allowed millions of people in here illegally under the Democrats. He is impeached by the House, and then it goes to Chuck Schumer in the Senate, and they don't take up the trial. So you have a guy that broke everything that he is obligated to do under the United States Constitution. He did the exact opposite. He is supposed to control our borders from invasion. Not only did he not control our borders from invasion, he was from HIAS, by the way, HIAS. People want to look that up. Hebrew immigration, whatever. So he lets in, millions of people from around the world into the interior of our country. And now what do they want to do? Now they want to surveil it. And now they want to pass all these laws to make sure you're an American citizen, to make sure you're legal, right? They allow the problem with the Democrats. And then in order to solve it, they want to surveil you every move that you make for your own safety. They allow the problem. They fix it by taking.
And this is what you talked about and we used to talk about on the farm. The Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, the Latin term ordo ab chaos. I want to bring order to the chaos I allowed to create or created on our own. And that seems to be the playbook, man. And I always say, if it ain't broke, don't break it. And they've literally been using the same playbook. I was commenting on your show the other day. A lot of these world wars, people don't even know. I implore everyone to look up the World War I conspiracy. James Corbett had him on the show several times. He's a great, great mind. People think World War I started with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, but no. 20 years prior to even a shot being fired, your Cecil Rhodes, your Alfred Milner and the Milner Group, a lot of these British cats were setting up and engineering World War I 20 years before a shot was even fired. So again, we're kind of ADD in how we see the world. We don't think like these social engineers and these globalists. They play the long game. That's why, Agenda 21 is not just for, 2021. It's for the 21st century. So these guys have been mapping, and I'm going to let you go, but it is interesting that Bilderberg was held in D.C. not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and we got all this stuff popping off. You got Trump going over to kiss the ring on Xi Jinping. A few days later, you got Putin going over to visit Xi Jinping and kissing the ring. A lot of stuff is in play right now that, again, I don't do the victory laps, but people have been sounding this horn for a long time. And again, finalize your thought on where you're saying things are going.
I think things are going toward China. I think it's going to a control grid. I think that's happening. I think that's what these AI data centers are about. I think that's what COVID was about. I think that's what the 702 FISA warrants are about. I think that's what the kill switches in your vehicles are about. I think that's what it's all about, is just total power and control. And, governments from around the world have always wanted to do that. Now they have the technological advances to do it. And if the American people don't fight back against it, that's what they're going to get. And we'll see what life looks like in a total compliant system. We'll have to figure it out whether we like that or not. But I think it's global. I think America is the piece that you got to take. I think once you take America, everything else falls, and I think that's the intent by this government.
I think before I let you slide, I think there is an agenda to start targeting certain critical infrastructure, whether it's our control grid, our water supply. I don't know if you saw there was this IED found through routine maintenance of this dam down in, I think it was Alabama. Did you see that? Yeah. So I mean, I think I think that's kind of and
the story's not even popular.
Right, it's nowhere. You can't even really find it. I mean, I just happened to have found it.
But a large bomb right off the coast, and nobody even talks about it. Nobody knows why they put it there. Nobody even knows that the story exists.
Yeah. Well, and I saw how much if that one bomb would have went off, like the damage it would have done. They extrapolated and broke down all the numbers and the metric tons of water and where it would have just destroyed, acres and hundreds of. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they're conditioning us to get used to potentially the targeting of our critical infrastructure. Again, problem, reaction, solution, that trauma-based conditioning. We will give up our rights like quick as shit just to make this problem go away. And the globalists, the social engineers are very, very good at implementing that strategy.
The easiest way to control people, Jeff, is fear.
Say it again?
The easiest way to control people is fear, right?
Without a doubt.
Fear is what controls people. So you're going to always have fear pushed out by our government, the news agencies, the intelligence agencies, and once they got you fearful, then they can control you. And that's how it works.
Again, we've seen the playbook over and over. If it ain't broke, don't break it.
Amen.
Rob, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you put in a lot of time today, and you're going to be coming back, man. I mean, obviously, you have a very busy schedule, but I could talk to you. We talk oftentimes off air for a long time, and I was glad to be able to get you on today because soon this man's going to be unbookable.
Anything for you.
He's blowing up.
Anything for you now until forever, Jeff. You know that.
What's that?
I said anything for you from now until forever. You know that.
I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate it. And honestly, Rob, I really appreciate what you're doing because I think people like you who are legitimately not just out there running their mouth and just, amping up the set to just get numbers and subscriptions. You are literally being the change you want to see. And that's another reason why I mess with you so heavy, bro. And again, man, thank you for the time. Where can we find you? I'll put it in the link, but where can we find you, bro?
Most of my information's out on X, and I'm just getting started there. I went from radio, so I didn't pay attention to social media, so I'm just now beginning to pay attention to social media. My producer goes, Rob, you're not a radio guy anymore. You are a social media personality. You have to start building your social media cred. So I'm just starting that. So at the Robb Carter on X is probably the best way to find me. We do our show, and you can check it out, the Robb Carter Show on Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, you name it. Just getting off the ground, but you can find it there.
It's taken off, man. And big shout outs to the young producer, young Isaiah. He's a huge part of the machine that Rob has going over there at the Robb Carter Show. I love you, man. I love you. And I just love watching you do what you do and wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
You got it, brother. Enjoy the day.
All right, you too. Peace and so much love, you guys. You guys know what it is. Stay tuned. There'll always be more.